The reason why brands and companies should be thinking about audio is because all of their consumers are, whether they know it or not. I mean, to your point about, people knowing when something doesn't feel right, but not necessarily knowing why. A lot of times it's audio. There is and especially now too, with so much slop, so much AI slop, and the level of inauthenticity that is being broadcasted. A really great song, jingle, like really well crafted sound design for movements in things like action sports or what have you. They can bring in the viewer or the listener into a world that AI just cannot.
There's so many creative parts of what we as humans create now that is being impacted by AI.
Yeah.
Where do you see that going into what you're doing? So, I mean, I know in voiceover, there are so many people who are crying that the sky is falling. And I can't say that they're not wrong. There are definitely ways that it's going to impact the way that I do what I do. And I just have to lean into being more human. I mean, what else do you do, right? But on your end, when you're talking about music and creating music and using sound design and making sound that goes with the visuals that you're creating in film and advertising and TV or whatever it is that you're making, how does AI have an impact on that? And what do you think you can do to still be relevant while that happens?
It's definitely a tough conversation because I think there's a lot of unhappiness in the road between where we are and where we're going to end up. Not to say that it's all gloom and doom, but I think ultimately, I was listening to Simon Sinek talk about his most recent book. And I think about it while I'm writing mine, because it is very easy for me to just throw some things into an LLM and have it spit back out in, with too many M dashes, the kind of content that I would want to put out. But I won't be better for having made it because I won't have, it's not that I would have made it. I would have just had somebody else make it for me, whether that's stealing of content from other writers or other musicians or other sound designers over the years. And it's all being just regurgitated in a less thoughtful format as I get my final piece.
So true. I was listening to an interview with Emma Thompson just recently, and she has written, I guess, a memoir or some kind of book that she's written. And she said that she writes everything by hand in a notebook, because she says there's a relation between the way that our brain works and our hand. Like it's you fundamentally learn what it is you're putting down on paper by having that connection, which I think is really interesting. And we totally miss if we put it into an AI chatbot, right?
Yeah. And I think the key too, and I am a pen and paper kind of guy.
There you go. Yeah.
Because you're right. It does access a different part of your brain. Also, it helps clearly with my memory too, as a major benefit. But ultimately, we are as a culture very excited and focused on the outcome and the destination, and not necessarily the journey. And in creating art, it's all about the journey. There are plenty of. I mean, look at Prince. He made thousands of songs that have never seen the light of day. And to him, about being a prolific creator, it was not about the adulation or the impact of releasing this stuff. It was about making it. And obviously, he had a longstanding career of doing many wonderful things, but that was not necessarily his focus. I would much rather have the experience of writing a book that no one ever reads than having adulation from people for things that are not my own. I'd rather always be a first-rate me than a second-rate someone else.
Yeah, I could totally get behind that.
But I think the thing that I see with the industry as a whole is there is a massive underappreciation for the skill that it takes in order to do what we do. And because of that, it will become fetishized as time goes on. So in the same way that I buy vinyl and listen to vinyl, that's how voiceover, and in my humble opinion, voiceover, sound design, music creation, all of these things will be. There will be a premium for it, and there will be a much smaller group doing it, because you will not be able to make a living at it. But I also see a future where we don't need to make a living at it and can still do it. And then the preference will snap backwards, where everybody is hoping that it's only going to be human led. So I do have hope for the future. I think in the short term, it's funny. You look at all these tech companies, and what are the things that they took away first? They took away all the things that they needed in order to sell their companies and couldn't do themselves, right? They needed to create pitch decks. They needed to create explainer videos. They needed to, all of those things. So they use their technology to supplant the creativity of others. And I think as time goes on, there is more, I don't want to say animosity, but there's more.
There's kind of animosity. A backlash, I think. There is a kind of a backlash. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we're moving toward a world where people are going to be willing to pay for a premium, but not necessarily have to get paid for their art. I think ultimately things like UBI, hopefully sooner than later, will make it so people have the freedom to create whatever they want to create and not necessarily worry about the financial ramifications of those decisions.
Yeah, it does make the playing field a bit more even for a lot of different endeavors.
Agreed.
So I mean,
my most recent record, it's not recent anymore, but the last record that I put out was in 2018, 2019, something like that. I didn't want any MIDI on the record. It's all, and it's, it's like a adult contemporary, pop rock record, whatever. But it was one of those things where I had that feeling. And it's not necessarily apples to apples with sidestepping AI and only working with humans, but it was very much like I wanted the human interaction, the human experience to be portrayed in this audio format. And I didn't want samples from somebody I've never met, somebody I didn't know, who played it in some studio in Prague, to have their stuff on my record. And so I think there are more people out there who feel the same way that I do. And as they're looking to build creative or build content, they're going to continue to do so in that vein.
Yeah. You were talking about listening to vinyl too. I mean, one of the interesting things about vinyl is that it's not a perfect medium. And it sounds great, but it's not perfect. And I think that's part of the thing that AI hasn't quite gotten about humans. It can emulate from an algorithm what we do and sound perfect, but we aren't perfect beings.
Yeah. No, and it's the same. It's the click or no click conversation too. I mean, do we want to have the creative breathe, or do we want to make it right, quote unquote, right? I would rather have it breathe. I do, for the most part, play to a click, but that's more because I've gotten so accustomed to how it is that I don't know if I'm competent enough as a musician to be able to make it sound good without doing it the way it should be done. But the things that I tend to listen to are not on a click. They're things that breathe. They're things that ebb and flow, and you get to feel the real emotion and hear the imperfections come through the material.
Yeah, live performance recorded, or, I liken this kind of to voice actors who are allowed to leave breaths in. Like, AI can emulate a human voice. They can even simulate a breath, but it never quite is in the right place. Yeah. It's kind of like the emphasis is wrong on certain things, like that AI can't quite get that right. And I kind of, the way that I think about this is that if a client wants to press a button and have a voice on their project, they probably were never going to pay me for what I do anyway. So I'm not too worried about that. But the clients who don't want to spend 3 hours trying to program the voice to sound kind of human, who can pay me to do something that they might need in 10 minutes of just giving me instruction, and we have a live session and it's done in like 10, 15 minutes rather than having to sit and program something for 4 hours, then, then what I do becomes worth paying for.
100%.
How much is your time worth, right?
I think that too. It's, I think a lot of people's fears is this going to be on rates, this race to the bottom, but I think it's actually going to go the other way. I think people who are, now it's essentially bespoke. This is like the bespoke creative, content provider, whether that be voiceover, sound design, or music, or what have you. I think rates can now go up because all the rates that are going down, all people trying to meet AI where it's at, the level of quality, level of creativity that are going in those things, the shortcuts that are created, it's all kind of going to sound the same. It's all going to be kind of not exactly what we need. And again, back to this, sort of fetishizing of the way things used to be, that's going to come to a premium. For a premium. And so I believe we're going to start to see a slow increase in rates for the true human experience because collaboration will be key. And people are going to start to feel that in a big way. If you have an entire team of 10 people that normally would do a project and now 8 of them are AI, I think it's going to feel that way. And so you're going to have to swing the pendulum back the other way in order to have it really be any good.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also that there's going to be some shakeup before that happens. But unfortunately, like you were saying before, I think there's going to be some pain before the gain. But hopefully it'll shake out that humans are valued for their creativity rather than replaced.
Yeah. But you know what else what I'm seeing out in the industry is like everybody's freaking out. They're like, oh, all the jobs are gone tomorrow. But we're still getting hired to do things like I'm not feeling some massive slowdown of work. I feel like its work is coming from a different place.
Hi, I'm David Dutton, and you're listening to the Audio Branding Podcast, a great place to learn about how powerful sound can be. And if you want to understand how to harness that power for your business or your brand, keep listening.
That's interesting. Where is it coming from instead?
I think you have people who are flocking to like high intent job boards or but it's not as much like I don't think the agents are getting the calls. I think the expectation is now we can go straight to like job boards and get it for less, but then end up paying the same. So I think it's more just a realigning of expectations more so than it is about a massive shift in the industry. I don't know. My phone's not necessarily ringing less. It's ringing for different types of things. So being diversified is key, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting the panic that everybody else is getting. It hasn't.
So what are you being called for now, out of curiosity?
I mean, we have, so my creative agency, Dominant Creative, we do a wide range of things. We've definitely narrowed our offerings, but that was by choice, not by market pressure. We're focused heavily on omni-channel campaign development and branding, more so than anything else these days. There is, it's not that we're not getting asked to do as much visual media, national spots, those kinds of things. But I think that's because more people are starting their businesses. And so we're getting those folks coming to us where they're just not ready. But all the ones that we are working with who are in that space, we're all talking about making new stuff, making new commercials, making, new jingles, doing podcast production for them, all those kinds of things, still within the relative near future. So, I don't know, maybe I got my head in the sand and I'm totally wrong and everybody else is like this idiot, but that's been my experience so far.
That's totally fine. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't know if I would say you're putting your head in the sand. You're living the life, right? You're doing the work that needs to be done.
We're trying.
So what are you excited about now as far as technology is concerned? I mean, beyond AI, what is exciting you about your industry at the moment?
I think developing spec and clarifying my own idea is much easier now. I'm a terrible artist. Terrible. Like, don't ever hand me like some colored pencils. When I want to sketch out storyboards and I want to lay something out, it's much easier for me to clarify that idea, and then have it animated in front of me. Not because I'm trying to put out a final product, but because I'm trying to understand better what I want. I think I am one of those types of creatives who needs to see something tangible that I can feel, touch, taste in the
Well,
world.
I think your clients are probably a lot like that too. I would imagine they want to see what it could be, right?
Yeah, but there's also a danger in that. Like, I don't want to show them something that we make with AI as a
Okay, yeah.
spec because
Yeah.
then they get, what if they get married to it and now I'm putting out work that I feel, diametrically
true.
opposed to morally.
Sure. Yeah.
But let's say I'm going to sit down and do, sound design for a spot or something. One of the other benefits that I feel like is access to really great original sounds. Makes my life easier because I don't necessarily have to craft everything from scratch. I don't love the fact that those who craft things from scratch like that are not as utilized, but I'm just in a different space in the creative process. And so again, for me to have access to sound libraries in a way that I didn't before, like I remember when I was scoring, to be able to pull in something like East West and just be able to get going is incredible to me, instead of having to wait 6 weeks to get in there and do it live. We eventually get in there and do it live anyway, but at least I can prove out the idea and clarify what I want first, with something that sounds emotive and tangibly real, instead of let's say something like keys. It's like a really bad Casio sounding, not that Casio's bad anymore, but they used to be when I was a kid. You pull out your Casio keyboard and you get these really awful string sounds, and then you like, this doesn't sound like what I want. But if I had had better samples, it probably would have went forward. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm utilizing technology these days.
Yeah. Although I guess there's an off-site thing to that. There's like an assumption that things can be done in a day. that puts the rush on things that it didn't necessarily have to be rushed before, I guess, or couldn't be rushed before.
In my experience, I think everything's always been rushed.
Hurry up and wait.
And I think it's because the planning and budgeting and approval process always takes way longer than it should. And so whatever you sent out for approval got approved late. And so,
okay, of course.
And again, because post workflows are always usually at the end of the process, unless you're going to sit down and make a record or whatever. You're at the end of the food chain. And so you're required to do it late. You're required to do it even less time, less money, and less budget as it goes. But in my experience, has always been the case. So
yeah. So now you have better tools to be able to handle that, I guess.
You definitely can accelerate the process. But again, I think people come to us because we're not utilizing those tools fundamentally for the work. We're just using it to explore and to play around a little bit. So I'm not jumping into a bunch of AI-driven software because I'm trying to shortcut the end of the process because I'm under the gun. We've had amazing clients, and we always come to them and say, this is what it will reasonably take. And if you want to do it a different way, we're probably not the right group for you. So I respect if you want to make a different choice.
That's something they need to know. And it's good that you're able to say that and stick to your guns that way. Like that's good. I think there should be more like that.
I think I learned early on, very, very early on, the birth of no. Because at the end of the day, I'm going to spend the same amount of time working 2 crappy gigs for low money than I will for the time spent to find the good job with the great people. So I'd much rather do the latter.
That makes total sense to me. Yeah. And it's how I've always approached my business as well. So I totally get that. Are there any projects that you particularly want to talk about, that you can talk about, that you're really proud of, sound design, music wise?
Well,
I'm just curious.
I mean, there's been some really cool stuff that I've gotten a chance to work on. I've had a pretty wide-ranging career. I did a lot of original sound design and beat generation for an artist a million years ago named Lorelei Carlson. It was a kind of a trip hop record, had a lot of like 07 vibes to it. And it was something that I loved, and I got to make a lot of the sounds from scratch. And so when I listened back to it, we did a cover of Rape Me by Nirvana, which ended up getting picked up by a bunch of publications and really making the rounds. And so I was really proud of that record. I really enjoyed that record. And then, I've done some theater releases over the years, like just some random things. I don't know if there's anything in particular that I would like say, man, that was amazing. I mean,
Anything advertising related, dare I ask?
yeah, no, like the Yonex spots were cool. We did some really great custom music for Sherry's Berries campaign that I worked on. What was that song called? Joy by Naomi LeGrand and Matt, what was his name? Matt Parod. It was the thing that drove the campaign, to be able to get this custom music made and have it brought in. This is back when I was with a previous production company, and it made the campaign. And we were really proud of that. I think the song worked really well. The campaign was really great. We did a lot of work on this tabletop shoot and flew to Poland to get it done. But we were really, if we didn't have the music and have that relationship with those artists in order to create that custom track, the campaign would have not been half as what it was when we finished. So that was pretty incredible. I did a bunch of campaigns for Walmart, last year, and those were really great. We did some great custom music for a lot of their campaigns. We had a great music director over. This is when I was at Deutsch, and they just, the relationships. It's all about relationships, really, in advertising when you're going for custom music, because you can throw out for the sheets and get everybody to just kind of pitch cold, but a lot of times you end up going with the people that already can crush it for you, and so you pick them. But yeah, that Walmart campaign was pretty incredible. It was for their Walmart Plus week. So yeah, those have been a couple examples.
That's great. Yeah. It's always nice to hear about things like that, and to hear about sound driving the campaigns. I mean, I always like to hear that here. I would ask you, actually, we're kind of getting to the end of things here, but I want to know why you think it's important for companies to think about the audio of their brand.
One of the favorite things I ever worked on was I got an opportunity to re-record the Baby Back Ribs jingle for Chili's. Still to this day, one of the most proud things I have in my career. That is a piece of audio that has absolutely defined the legacy of that brand. And it is very easy to forget what drives a consumer to make a purchasing decision, to align themselves with an identity, because that's essentially what your dollars go to. You're wearing a moniker for the decisions that you make and what brands you align with. That was something that was relatively simple to accomplish and made all the difference in the world. The reason why brands and companies should be thinking about audio is because all of their consumers are, whether they know it or not. I mean, to your point about, people knowing when something doesn't feel right, but not necessarily knowing why. A lot of times it's audio. There is and especially now too, with so much slop, so much AI slop, and the level of inauthenticity that is being broadcasted. A really great song, jingle, like really well crafted sound design for movements in things like action sports or what have you. They can bring in the viewer or the listener into a world that AI just cannot. And ultimately, the thing that I spend most of my time doing is connecting the dots between a good brand and better sales. And ultimately, that's what it will or will not do. And audio is a massive part of that. Yeah,
I could not agree more. Again, reason I have this podcast.
And I appreciate the work that you do too. I mean, I'm very glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too. And I'm glad you are here too.
Oh,
so how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to do that, David?
My phone number is yeah.
Careful.
So my creative agency is called Dominant Creative, and they can find us on the web at dominantcreative.com. I own a number of businesses, including a publishing company. We're in the process of putting out more art and apps and books and all kinds of other things as well. And then they can, for anybody who dares to listen to the old music, I'm sure you can find me by name on the internet somewhere. I've fronted a number of alt rock bands and put out solo records. So that's out there by my name. You could just Google me and I'm sure you'll find it.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm really glad to have had this conversation with you. And thank you for all the creativity that you're putting out into the world. It's something that we need.
Oh, I appreciate you, Jodi, so much. Thank you for having me. And it's always great to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
Well, that's the end of this episode. Thanks for listening. And if you like what you heard, why not tell a friend about this podcast? It's available in all the usual locations. Until next time.